Imagine a video so weird, so disjointed, so mixed in its messaging, trying to say things without actually saying much of anything, that it made the rounds in music circles everywhere. Imagine a video of such quality, and I just had to respond to it. I had to make a video about it because otherwise I would just have this weight on my chest I wouldn't have any hopes of getting rid of other than by putting whatever my thoughts are into this piece of content that you are watching right now. And since my fan base is evolving, shall we say, one might call into question as to why the hell am I doing this? Like, no one's gonna watch it. And I know. But still, don't worry, non-existing audience. I'm aware of that. And what this is for is just therapy. It's a therapy session for me personally. And if this thing ever gets beyond the first 50 or 100 views, which I doubt it'll ever be that much, that would be just the cherry on top for me, honestly. But again, this is mostly just therapy for me. So without further ado, let's just get this thing going. Yeah, by the way, this is not a hit piece or a hate campaign against Rick Beato. He is, I bet, a fine human being. I don't know the person in private, personally, whatever. What I am just attacking is the arguments or the hypotheses that he brings forth. Nothing more and nothing less than. It is just a disagreement on an artistic or philosophical level, and I would even say on an empirical level, and it's nothing against the person. I'll be just tackling the arguments or lack thereof, and that's it. And of course, I'll be doing this from my own heavily biased, personal, subjective perspective. So there's always that about anything concerning art and discussions about art. So no shade at him. Let's just go. Okay? Just so you guys know, this will be not very visually active as a video. So if you want to just play it in the background and so you don't have to watch my, ugly mug the entire time, this video is perfect for that, since visual additions will be minimal. Maybe where appropriate, I will give some, or whenever I feel like it, because also I don't want to make this too hard for me in the cutting stage. But yeah, you can play it in the background. You won't be missing like some vital nuggets of knowledge if you just have it running in the background. Just wanted to tell you that. Okay, so right off the bat, the video is hitting me with, wrong vibes, let's just say. I mean, from the title alone, which I understand is supposed to be like YouTube ready, clickbait, etc. in order to get engagement. So in this case, I take things literally because the title of the video was like, this is why music is really getting worse, like music in this case. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I've been avoiding this video for a couple weeks because it just screamed, rage bait content to me. And for the most part, it is kind of so. I am guilty of falling for it, I guess. But it just didn't leave me with the, oh yeah, whatever, that's just some, opinion and that's it. It is a weird stance on music making, and just the art of music in general that I just had to address, because it goes against so many things that I think are amazing about making music and about music making in general, that I just, for my own sake, I had to respond to this. And it starts off by his first part being titled that music making is too easy now. And already, like, too easy for whom? Too easy, why? And why would this be a problem? He goes into explaining it later on, but already, if you put this as your first point, like your priority basically to get right out of the bat, it's like it's just rubs me the wrong way, to be completely honest. And I didn't know how to respond other than to just like almost do this at my monitor. But I let him explain, and what he basically does, he goes into the 50s, and like he goes back in time and explains like, oh yeah, Frank Sinatra had to, like, if he, flubbed a line or made a mistake or whatever, he had to do the entire thing again, and not only his part, but like from the entire band or the entire orchestra that was there, because it was just on one tape. There was no multi-tracking, so it was a hugely involved process doing this. Okay, then he jumps into the 60s, where you had like multi-tracking. You could like correct one specific parts, like you could redo vocals, you could redo guitars, you could redo bass, whichever. And then he said, yeah, this is when things got easy. And then he immediately jumps to 1998 and brings up autotune, of course, and says that, yeah, putting a vocal through it to land a specific note that you couldn't hit, and that's important somehow. And then he closes this thing off by going into rock music that uses beat detection, and saying that, 2000s rock music therefore succumbed to sounding very formulaic and the same, and also because of tighter budgets, that they couldn't then afford quality session musicians, and that they then basically, had to polish turds in order to get stuff out. And yeah, that's convoluted on so many levels, because already we see that we are kind of diverging really quickly as to why is this that music is getting worse. And it's already a hint as to what type of music he's talking about, and that this journey is going towards pop music. And at that point, I was just like, who gives a crap about pop music nowadays? In the same way that we, as collectively did 2 decades or even 3 decades ago. The beautiful thing about pop music nowadays is that you can just completely ignore it and you're still fine. And it like frees up your mental space to explore sounds that you actually want to explore, and that you're not being spoon-fed by some, radio hot rotation, or the, whatever is on primetime on TV, or on the cover of all magazines. You can actually more liberally decide for yourself what you want to listen to and what you want to really sink your teeth in. We live in the best times for music listeners ever. And I will also argue that we live in the best times for musicians ever, to some extent, before you go nuts. But yeah, why he brings autotune up and beat detection, etc., it makes sense from his perspective, because Rick Beato, is an insanely skilled musician, music producer, and etc. So of course it grinds his gears when he sees that producers that should know better are going the shortcut, because, you could, for example, record drums and an entire drum set with a band, etc. But you can also just use Easy Drummer and other sample libraries to achieve almost the same thing, that the majority of audiences won't gonna notice the difference anyway. And this, of course, sucks. But again, whom is this concerning here? And we're talking about pop music, and we're gonna come back to that one. So already a bit weird start as to wanting to talk about quality, and then saying, yeah, autotune and sample libraries. And I'm like, okay, cool. But then why is the video title music when we clearly are talking about pop music here? So already weird messaging. Then he goes a little bit into a rant about like, as I preemptively said, about like, oh yeah, but recording, drums is hard. And nowadays, it almost sounds like, kids these days are just using them sample libraries. And instead of, recording a guitar amp, they just use amp sims and, get these things done. Or again, it sounds like kids these days use MIDI packs instead of experimenting on a keyboard and seeing what they can do, etc. Yeah. Okay, why is this not making sense in the way that he's bringing it up? Because now he opens up another kettle of fish, and it is about easy ways to get into music production, like with MIDI packs, etc. And kids these days using these. First of all, why is this a problem? It is not a problem at all, because for someone like me, a bedroom musician who uses everything I can get my hands on and uses crude ways to get stuff done. For example, this professional mattress behind me for like very ghetto level sound treatment is yeah, you gotta start somewhere. Like almost all points I can rebut with by saying you gotta start somewhere. Like as an amateur producer, you will use sample libraries, you will use MIDI packs, maybe you will use safe choices when it comes to guitar sounds, etc. Because this is like you have no idea in the beginning and you got to start somewhere. And of course Rick might say, well, this is not what I'm talking about, but it sounds like it. It sounds like it. And when you are railing about kids these days using MIDI packs, well, wouldn't you as an amateur musician, if you had the capabilities of using those, use these at least once? Because I remember when I started, I had no idea, or almost no idea, and I was, like you said, experimenting on the keyboard and saw what happens, but it was mostly trial and error because I didn't have a higher music theory education, because I just didn't have I just didn't have the parents who were into music. I'm the only musician in the family, so they couldn't hook me up with, some uncle or some aunt that knew that stuff, because no one did in this case. And we weren't poor, but music lessons are expensive, and I had them for a time when we could afford it, and later it just fizzled out. So I didn't have the same the same access, and YouTube very much wasn't all that much a thing. And I would have been relatively happy about MIDI packs and using them as a stepping stone to then get better, because now I know through my experimentation what kind of works and what doesn't. I create my own chord progressions, etc. They aren't like the best in the world, but they get the job done, and I like them. So having these beginner things is good. I cannot see how you can shit on MIDI packs and kids these days using these when they are just a tool to help you. If you like it, take it. If you don't, just don't. It's that easy. So yeah, already kind of weird. And also, the next thing that he brings up is a short thing, is that, in the 2000s, labels didn't sign rock bands anymore because they were too expensive, and it was much cheaper to sign artists that could do most of the things on their laptops. And to this I say, because a change in taste from the public couldn't have been the driving force behind that, could it? Like, putting the cart before the horse here as well. Because when you can make electronic music on a laptop, you can also make rock music on a laptop, even in like the 2000s. It wouldn't sound pretty good, but like very heavily electronic rock was a thing, especially with the whole like new metal stuff really kicking into high gear back then. So where's the rent for that? Again, unclear. And then now the primary thing that really got me cooking was this statement: creative dependency on technology limits the ability of people to innovate. This was the point where I just almost screamed at my monitor, and I was like, this is objectively false. Absolutely false. And I am entitled to do and to say such thing, because I am... Do I have it somewhere? I can't really like hold this up, but if you look at my videos on my channel, you can see I am a synth nerd. And a synthesizer is very much a piece of technology. And you could say that I am creatively dependent on this piece of technology. And let me tell you something. It did not limit my ability to innovate. It absolutely gave me explosions of innovation because I could create sounds that I cannot create with other instruments. Like, by definition, a synth is capable of producing a plethora of timbres that are not possible with acoustic or semi-acoustic instruments. It's insane. And just think back to the 1980s when synths just ruled the planet, basically. Like in early 80s especially, with acts like New Order, Depeche Mode, and, you know, basically half of post-punk hitting the scene. Synths were everywhere, and they pushed the envelope. Like, this is just a fact of art history you cannot deny. And the synth is also so crazily diverse. You have subtractive synthesis, you have additive synthesis, you have FM synthesis, which each produces a different variety of timbres. You can have them controlled by a classical keyboard. You can have them controlled by nothing, just by itself, by feeding it and making it into a generative piece of musical art. You can have it be influenced by your heartbeat, by the orbits of the freaking planets. I've seen Eurorike modules for that, by the freaking phases of the moon, whatever. A synth is a portal into another world. How is this limiting innovation? Just to drive the point home. This is insane. This is an insane take to have. It's not a good one. Absolutely not. Another favorite example of mine is the TB303, which was meant to be a replacement for the ever stoned or ever late bass player on rehearsal and practice day. And it completely flopped because it didn't sound much like a bass guitar. So it sat unsold on shelves and in the backs of shops until, like, in the late 80s and early 90s, some DJs and electronic music producers dug them up because they were super cheap and were analog, and they bastardized the crap out of this thing. And a new genre was born. Actually, a couple, but like the most important one with this box, with this silver renegade of sound, was acid. You wouldn't have an entire genre of music if not for this musical piece of technology. Like, you see what I mean? It's completely insane that a person of such expertise, much higher expertise than mine, would say something like that. It just blew my mind at this point that someone could say something like that. And it just doesn't hold up any water. And just to put a few things clear, because I already can imagine people, you know, feverishly typing in the comments or like screaming at their monitor, as you're entitled to. Like, of course, new technology, especially if it does something easier than a previously conventional thing, does it make you lazy? Sure, to an extent. There's no denying that. Especially if that stuff was tedious but necessary and it has now become easy with just a few clicks, then of course I will opt out instinctively for the easier option. And this could lead to some level of skill being lost. That's granted, absolutely. But when stuff gets easier, it also leads to the artist being able to focus on different things, like trying to, trying out more stuff, getting things right, or maybe simply not having to pull an all-nighter in order to finish an EP or an album and do something else, like, for example, having a family or having a life or whatever. Like, the idea of a self-published musician like we have today, who is capable of producing, mixing, and amateur mastering, maybe, and playing most instruments, is much more thinkable these days because we have the tools in order to make the tedious work of doing all those things at once, wearing all those hats, not only easier, but possible in the first place. And again, I fail to see how this is problematic at all. But again, we're gonna wrap up at the end why this is weird. But now let's go to the second bomb that he has, let go of, the homogenization of music. Oh Jesus! When I heard that, I almost wanted to throw myself out the window. And the thing is, I'm not totally denying his point here, because again, he means something else when he talks about music, and I mean something else. When I say the word, the term, music, I mean all of music, like from electronic to industrial to swing to bossa nova. I mean all of music. In this video, when he says music, he means pop music. So we are already like arguing on two different fronts. But because his word choice is so weird, it comes out as really, really dickish, like really just outright flying in the face of observable reality. And with the homogenization of music, just to get one obvious thing out of the way, no, this is not what's happening. It's exactly the opposite that's happening. We have such an unprecedented variety of music out there nowadays that it's difficult to keep up. And since I am not giving a crap about pop music, I have all this mental space free to like really go into different genres that I enjoy, which has led over the years into a diversification of my spectrum that if I tried to do this when I was a kid or even a teenager in the late 90s and early 2000s, this simply wouldn't have been possible on the same level, if not for the internet and streaming and so on and so forth. So he's already off on this front. But let's try to play devil's advocate and actually support his point. There is tendencies of homogenization, which is piggybacking off of his first point, where things become too easy. Because when things become too easy, those easy routes become the predominant form in which stuff gets done. For example, I know from metal circles is that the sampled drum libraries used are very similar to each other, which leads to metal productions, especially on the lower to mid end, sounding pretty identical, which leads to them sounding like safe choices because they simply work. They aren't unique all that much, but they get the job done. And same with guitar sounds, which are usually an SM57 pointed at a 4x12 cabinet with Celestion Vintage 30s inside. Like, this is the cliche, perfect guitar sound, basically. And everyone's, or close to everyone, is pushing this. And that leads to, the homogenization, the thing that he is talking about. Because musicians are rather willing to achieve the sound quicker in order to have a safe choice and to be like part of the club of, oh yeah, this sounds like the choice that the professionals are making. Because crafting your own sound is pretty, it's risky. It's a risk. And if you are looking for appeal, you don't want to make risky moves. But here's the thing. This is relevant for pop music or like popular versions of those genres like metal, etc. But it's completely arbitrary for more niche versions of music like I listen to, like electronic body music or industrial or ambient or like other or new wave that I like as well. So yeah, this is just already trying to get in the in like weird directions. And the thing is that what I just described with the like safe choices happens to producers and musicians that use those things. And yeah, it's kind of moot because it's not just a latest trend that, the homogenization is happening, but it was always happening. Like, remember gated reverb, how it was everywhere in the 80s? Or synths on everything, even if it didn't make sense, also in the 80s? And also remember the 90s, where techno beats were on everything, even if it didn't make sense? Like, usually like 909, drum machine types, especially with the open hi-hat, my favorite sound, to be honest. And also trap beats on everything nowadays, which also will die down like any trend, which he also brings up. That, oh yeah, trap beats on everything. Dude, just wait. It will be over soon. Like, peak hip-hop is already past. Don't at me. Actually do. I'm always open to discussion. And also, remember the 2010s, Rick? When Skrillex type breakdowns were on everything with like screechy bro step. And like one famous example was the Men in Black soundtrack, or like the soundtrack song that was made by Pitbull that had an out of nowhere like dubstep breakdown in the middle that was just why? And yeah, it was because of trends. But guess what? No one wants their dubstep breakdowns anymore. The last one that did this in the last decade was, of course, the best musician of all time, Corey Feldman. But yeah, no one's as innovative as this guy. Around the 5-minute mark, he makes another point that I just don't understand how to, take it seriously. And the sentence is, all of the stuff that we talked about up until now, the beat detection, the autotune, etc., leads to music becoming more formulaic and people just following trends. Isn't this just pop music in a nutshell? Like, where's the surprise here? Like, what's the argument? What's the argument here? That's what I was looking for. Where's the argument? Like, of course, that's what pop music is. That's the ultimate description of pop music in a nutshell. It's formulaic stuff that's following trends. This is just pure speculation on my part. I think part of Rick's frustration is that he's looking into pop music for stuff that he finds awesome and can't find it and gets angry because of it. And my obvious response to that is just ditch pop music. You don't need to hold on to it. It's not relevant for your survival. Just ditch it and go into niches where people are actually making the music that you like. Because obviously, you're not the target audience for the pop music. Just like I am not the target audience for pop music at all. So that's why I stopped caring. That's why I just could move on and, do my own thing. So I just detached myself and never looked back. Might be something of a food for thought. Just ditch pop music and really go into the stuff that you enjoy. Like, don't give a shit about this at all. And oh god, after that he starts with the whole AI discussion, which is its own separate thing, but I'm gonna touch on a few points. First of all, that he brings up AI is a beautiful manifestation of my point earlier, is that this video is unfocused as hell. It doesn't really go deep into a certain problem, into a certain issue, and it just brings up all the issues, but half-heartedly. So it's just a big rant, sort of like I'm doing right now. But then again, I don't have a platform. I have subscribers in the 2 digits. He has orders of magnitude many more subscribers than I do, and therefore an audience, and therefore also kind of a responsibility as well, because he has such a large audience that what he says has an impact. It does change people's way that they think about things. And this is also why I'm making this video in the first place, because what he does with his audience, with his outreach, I would say is irresponsible a little bit. Now, of course, he's not telling people to like drink alcohol or smoke weed or whatever that he's propagating, but like this type of cynicism is just leading us nowhere in order to get more people into creating music or get the people to create music that is a bit more intricate it just doesn't do that. It's just making people go, oh yeah, kids these days, and fucking, modern plugins and whatever, them suck, and this is the only problem that makes it all worse. And if good old days, which might surprise you, isn't a solution at all. The solution is actually much more tedious and difficult to implement, and that is, trying to see the positive sides of all the modern things and then use it for positive things in order to, for example, like Rick does, like going into details about certain songs as to why they work, about certain different types of chord progressions, etc. Like he knows how to do those things. Sorry, I bumped the mic. He knows how to do those things, but in this video just goes full on screaming at clouds mode. And I know that he acknowledges this in the second video. I've watched it as well, but the second video is basically just a doubling down, which is disappointing, but I'll address it at the end. So, yeah, this whole AI thing, in my opinion, completely separate discussion and completely muddies his original point that he tried to make. And as to AI replacing music production, I am not even of the same in the same position like he is, because using AI to do everything isn't appealing from an artistic standpoint. Like one of my favorite comparisons that I love to make is for those gamer people out there playing Grand Theft Auto or GTA. Let's just take GTA 5, right? And if you were a 12-year-old that played GTA, for me it was GTA Vice City and San Andreas, I've played them on cheats and with add-ons that basically made you spawn a Lambo with a click of a button. And it was fun. But here's the kicker. It was fun, but it also got boring very quickly. And you want to know what was more fun with the same game? Playing it properly, actually. Playing it properly was much more satisfying than using all those cheats and mods that basically made you invincible, super rich, etc. You want to know why? Because those were accomplishments that I did. I finished a mission because I knew what I was doing. I solved a particular problem because I found the solution to it by myself. I didn't use cheats. I didn't use mods. It was my accomplishment. Same thing when he brings up, oh yeah, people will then use AI and sing into it and replace it with Drake's voice and Billie Eilish's voice and Taylor Swift's voice. I'm like, sure, but where's the fun in that? Like, which artist or aspiring artist that wants to become something or someone would want to go into this route and call something, oh yeah, I'm an artist now. But was it you? Is it you? And no, don't even try to compare it to using something like auto-tune or drum machines, etc. Because this is just about specific parts of a song. And also, auto-tune and drum machines can be used as their own genre-defining timbre in its own right. Whereas AI just gives you a ready-made meal. You didn't do shit. And where's the fun in that? Like, would you claim to be a cook when all you did is push a pre-made burger into the microwave and then put some ketchup on it and call it a meal? Would you call yourself a chef? I wouldn't do that. But when I do the same thing, but I do it with the ingredients from the bottom up, then it is mine. I did that because I knew what I was doing. I wasn't just putting everything into a microwave and pushing a button. So, in my opinion, this point is completely moot. But yeah, let's just ditch it and go to the next point. Why I think his AI rant is a bit misplaced, and because it's, again, his video is pop music focused, and what I just described for artists outside of the whole pop music thing, it's completely irrelevant. And of course, labels are gonna push for AI stuff because they're a business. Pop music is a business. It's business first, artistry second. It's always been like that, and it's gonna be like that. And that is also why I ditched pop music, because for me it's artistry first and everything else comes second. Popularity is nice, don't get me wrong. I like my stuff to be heard by even lots of people, I would say. But it's not my primary career or whatever. And even if it is the career of the musicians that I enjoy, it's a much smaller scale. They're not the biggest musicians in the universe, but just well known in their niche. And they're super jazzed about it. Weird, isn't it? It's not. And those big labels, of course, going to push those AI things because they're a business. Their job is to make money. And pop music is just another way for them to make money. They invest in artists. They expect a return on that investment. It's the most unartistic thing you can think about. So what are we actually talking about? In my opinion, completely irrelevant stuff. Just ditch pop music, ditch this whole stupid universe, and you're going to be a happier person with that. Like, really. Right. So let's get to the next point that he makes around the 10-minute mark about streaming and how it is devaluing music. And he absolutely is touching on some very, very valid points in there. And that he is, problematizing that all, or like the music that has been uploaded to, in his example, Spotify, is available for $11 a month. And is it too little? Absolutely. Like, I would pay twice that if artists are gonna be compensated fairly as a result of it. They're not, and that sucks. And that is absolutely correct in what he does there. However, his problems don't stop there. And he is, describing about like, oh yeah, people on their phones, they're just, swiping stuff away, again with his kids these days argument. And is it something bad? Well, it depends on how you look at it, actually. Because in terms of accessibility and diversity, today's musical landscape is the best it's ever been for this generation. And a generation which, even if barely, because I'm not that young anymore, I was a part of. Like, I have physically lived through the shift from mostly analog media or like mostly local media into ubiquitous media with streaming. Like, I was still in the beginning of the 2000s, well into like CDs and sometimes even vinyls, even from my parents and such. And then basically transitioning into streaming first via YouTube, most of the things, and then just Spotify wiped the floor with everyone. And did it have some consequences? Yes, of course, sure. In that musical downloads definitely pushed the price down on what musicians could expect people to pay for a piece of music. And that is, of course, its own problematic side. And I'm with Rick. On this one, 100%. However, there is a flip side to this as well. And this is access. And not just access for me, the listener, but also access for the musician, the artist as well. Let's have a look. So the access has been so much easier for me as a listener that my musical taste just branched off insanely. And I could just go places, and I wasn't doomed to just having a record store, if I even had any in my town, to have a particular set of musical genres on their shelves and be limited to that. But I had just anything. And this is how I got into some weird genres in the first place, that because they were so off the mainstream, so off the beaten path, I wouldn't have a chance to having ever encountered them in a, regular record shop. And I'm grateful for that, because then I could sink my teeth into things that were just awesome on their own accord. And it is through this easy access that not only listeners can get to the music easier than ever, but also musicians of those weird genres can get easier than ever to those listeners. If you want to hear a musical veteran explaining this effect and explaining these, this access, how much better it is, Go watch a couple interviews done by Gary Numan, who very much is championing this newfound freedom for musical artists. Um, Even though he is very much an old school artist, like he came out big with Our Friends Electric with his Tube Away Army in the 1980s, and he's now still making records and having a second revival of sorts with his new direction, and is making pretty fine, doing pretty fine for it. And he is always saying that back then the music industry was horrible, absolutely horrible, and that nowadays for an artist like him who likes to produce his sounds, his ideas, his direction, these times are far better than they ever were in the golden ages of music. So, yeah, if you want some other perspective on the music industry and discussions about those, go, as I said, and watch some Gary Numan interviews there, because some insights are really, really nice and give you a bit of a flip side from the usual, oh yeah, music industry was better back then because back then we made money, nowadays we don't make money, and to hear there's something different. And this is again where my big disconnect with Rick is taking place, because I really do not care for all the big names that he brings up in the video, because he's like, oh yeah, what about like all the catalog of the Police and Led Zeppelin and etc. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care because I'm not their target audience anyway. And as are a significant chunk of people, because pop music is not all of music. And with discussions like these, this obvious fact gets just swept under the rug. Pop music is losing relevance each year, and it's a positive thing. And I'll just put a quote from a Tantacrul video here to illustrate this point.
It seems to me that there are a million tiny interconnected streams, a chaotic world of small-scale artists and visionaries, and then there's one big dumb lake, where experimentation and forward-looking art doesn't happen, where being a tired cliché is considered a virtue.
It is through this new technology that I could find a connection to music I couldn't have found without it. And I just could give things a try more freely and with less strings attached. With streaming, like to Jean-Michel Jarre, to Enigma, to Kraftwerk, to Tangerine Dream, to Depeche Mode, and so on. And all musical projects from several decades before I was even alive. And on the flip side, also, many smaller artists have grabbed my attention, and I wouldn't have ever had the chance to encountering them in a record shop. Things like, and don't feel like sad because those names don't say anything to you, but if they sound interesting, give them a try. Project like SITD, Suicide Commando, Roter Sand, Black Nail Cabaret, Zotax, VNV Nation, just to name a few of the like dark, heavy, goth electronic music there. Without those streaming services, I wouldn't have this easy access into this parallel universe that was always there, but I never knew existed. And most people I talk to don't know that this type of music exists at all, because they just have, by definition, no chance to appearing in record shops like these. And especially industrial, like Einstürzende Neubauten or Testing Department, you know? It's just... The new technology made it possible for me in the first place. And streaming led to a democratization of access both for music listeners and for music makers, the artists. And it's been a phenomenal thing for both musical diversity and quality. Yes, actually the opposite of what Rick is claiming. So yeah, this is like the cherry on top. Another point that he is bringing up, like that by consuming it just readily, it can't be part of your identity. Rick, this is just like, come on, you should know better, man. Of course, there are parts of our identity, like for realsies, man. Like the easy access was precisely what made those small gems become part of my identity, because because they were such rare finds. It was like, oh, I uncovered it, and it feels so unique and personal that I made such a strong identity with it that pop music schlock wouldn't have ever the capability of doing so. Because I don't give a shit how many other people are sharing my taste in music, because it is my taste in music. I take pride in it for having honed it by myself. Of course, with the help of algorithms, no denying that. But it's still my decision if I do something with what the algorithm is pushing at me. And if it is good, it will actually present me with stuff that I am interested in or that I want to venture into. If it's garbage, I'm gonna just ignore it. And it is regardless if I shelled out $15 for an album or $11 a month subscription. Dude, in the 2000s, the way that most people got music was through pirating stuff. And is your argument really that if you pirated music, you just had no attachment to it because no money exchanged hands? This is just denying observable reality, dude, because that's not how it played out. And sometimes those people that first had those downloaded copies on their burned CDs, later when they got older and when they became adults, later purchased them anyway in order to add the legitimate copy to their collection. And also, people go to concerts, people buy merch. This is also a way that you can grow attached to those people. Like, don't those people exist? And especially young people do that. Like, the whole rant has been about, like, kids these days. Not always, but this was the tone of it. And the exact opposite is happening from what he says. Like, the people go to concerts, man. And they do it because they don't know what it means, that it's not part of identity. The countless Swifties and BTS fans camping outside the venue for weeks in order to get in first into the arenas to see their idols maybe once in their life. Like, isn't this part of their identity? The early 20s nerds who shelled out $200 for a limited edition vinyl off of Bandcamp from an artist that has below 1,000 followers. Isn't this part of their identity? Is this what kids don't understand these days? Or the kid who just discovered a band and is so into it that they know all of the lyrics by heart and talk to anyone about the favorite band nonstop? These types of kids just don't exist anymore, you say? Because you don't have a record store or weird uncle's collection as the only means of obtaining those sounds? I seriously don't understand what this person is on about. It just doesn't make any sense. And then later he's saying, like, these things meant something. They're still meaning something. It's just not in the way that it once was, Rick. Times have changed. And some things will be forever lost. And it sucks. I'm also getting older now. And, CDs won't be as relevant as they once were when I was a kid. And it's not anymore this magical feeling that when you are buying a CD from the store and putting it for the first time into your CD player to hear how it sounds for the first time. Yes, those times where most people did that are gone. But it's not completely eradicated. You can still go to a CD store and do this. You can still go to a record store with vinyls and do the same thing. And it's okay, because times are always changing. And of course, I can be whinging about this being the case, or just go with the flow and carve out a niche for myself while I do stuff that I'm comfortable with. I am choosing the path that is fun for me. Why can't you do that? Because I don't give a shit, and you shouldn't either, Rick, as to what the majority is. Who gives a shit about the majority of people doing stuff? And this is something that you also brought up, that like, oh yeah, like we and like us and our friends used to come together and listen to the vinyls, etc. Listening to music at home was a new thing back then. And it was a pastime because that was the cool thing to do. People wanted to be rock stars and rock musicians, etc. because this was the cool thing to do. Because it was new, it was trendy, it was pop. But then different trends came up. Like, people wanted to be football players or soccer players, and nowadays kids want to be influencers, and that's just trends, man. And music listening is a normal thing now. It's not as, oh my god, you have a record player at home, dude. Let me get to you and catch 10 of my friends and listen to Led Zeppelin all day. It's just not the times anymore. And again, it's been a trend, it's gone away, but music still lives on. Just like people that want to be influencers will be not as phenomenal as it is now, or it is still now, and it will become into something more commodified later down the line. And the next trend will be everyone wanting to become, I don't know, gardeners or something. I don't know, just anything random or something that doesn't even exist yet. And that's fine, because again, these are trends, and I don't want to make my mental sanity dependent on trends. Like, this is just the freaking wrong way to go. And just because that this magic has been lost doesn't mean that it's gone completely. And yeah, we kind of have to bite the bullet and move on. Almost done. The question that he puts, like, what is one song worth? And this is a small thing, but I really do not understand this urge to put a monetary value on something that is a piece of art, which doesn't have an inherent value at all, like a monetary thing. It has value as long people are willing to pay something for it, or to devote their time, effort, and attention towards it. And for me, the emotional value, the personal value of a piece of art is most importance. Now, not what I had to put into a cashier's hands at checkout, or what a monthly payment goes to. It's the emotional value of that is important for me, and that lasts for decades and makes me into the person that I am. And of course, the artist still has to pay for rent, I know, but the problem isn't the listener. It's that we live in a system, yes, we live in a society, I know it sounds cliche, but we live in a system which doesn't appreciate and value art as anything else other than entertainment, and then gets valued in the same capitalistic way as food, cars, real estate, and socks. It kind of doesn't fit in. It doesn't belong there, but, you know, here we are. And yeah, the problem is much deeper and much more complicated than, oh yeah, the listener just doesn't want to pay attention, and they're on their TikToks and shit. That's not, you're barking up the wrong tree, just completely. And the thing that just puts a nice ending to it is at the 12-minute mark, where Rick just kind of gives up, and he says, like, well, I could do a video explaining, you know, what makes a song better, etc., but who's gonna listen to it anyway? Like, with a mindset like that, you can just give up, and it's kind of lame, because, you know, I know that Rick did and does, you know, videos that people love, where he actually goes into this type of explanation because he has tons of expertise and his perspective on things, usually. But here it basically boils down to, well, no one's gonna listen to it anyway, so why bother? I mean, why not just cater to the music enthusiast audience that you absolutely have? And it's not a waste of time. It's still important and empowering work. Because with that kind of mindset, nothing niche but interesting would be kept alive at all, and would be lost to the sense of time. And that's sad. You have a huge ass audience, and you've catered towards it and given them something huge of value to work with. So why stop now? Just because the majority, or the, you know, the mainstream doesn't give you the attention that you think it deserves. Screw the mainstream. Do your thing. Just, you know, I'm talking in circles. I've already made my point clear. Ditch the mainstream. Be happier as a result of it. And sure, the numbers will be smaller, but at least you're gonna have fun. At least you will have people that are actually taking you seriously, taking your stuff to heart, and doing something with it. Don't wait on the mainstream to welcome you with open arms, because that ship has sailed a long time ago. Just leave it to die. There's nothing worth in holding the corpse in your arms anymore. Just let it drop to the floor and let it decompose like it deserves. Just don't give it the time of day. Absolutely not.
Don't look at your phone, or as I call it, the thought deletion device, because it empties your mind out.
Really? Thought deletion device? Ugh. I mean, do smartphones have bad things, and, do they sometimes cater to our laziest desires? Yeah, sure they do, but just to put out there and oh yeah, put the phones away, kids, because then you can listen to the music. It's just they know. Really, they know. And maybe they will do the listening on those phones. Trippy concept, I know, but this is how it can work as well. All right, so here, the implication of this whole thing is that young people just don't listen to the music, which is just untrue, as I have shown, and it's annoying at this point, because you won't win any of those young people over if you keep patronizing them like that. I am technically still barely one of those young people, or at least I was at some point in my life, and guess what? I am a musical nerd because I listen to the music like you say. I listen to the lyrics, I listen to the timbres and to the melodies, so much in fact that it made me want to become a musician myself. And had I heard a voice like yours back in the day, it would have put me off, because it would have given me the feeling that if I don't experience music the way that you do, which is fine, by the way, but it's not the only way that you can experience and really internalize and really savor this music. It's not the only way. The new way is different, but it doesn't mean it's bad. And it doesn't mean it doesn't create, just swaths of young musical enthusiasts that sometimes even want to make something themselves. Not with MIDI packs, not with sample drums only, etc., but really push the envelope. Most people attempting this type of stuff won't be able to make it past that bar, because it's a hard bar to clear. Being a musician or an artist of any capacity takes a lot out of you. It is a lot of effort for very often very little payoff at the end, be it financially or at all. Even getting recognition for what you've done, being something special or being even something passable, is difficult to come by. And you basically have to have the mentality of an insane person to even want to endure such a thing, let alone pass through that and smash through those barriers, and to still keep going, even you either get no feedback or everyone tells you to not do it. Because being an artist, being a musician is not the thing that rakes in millions. There are thousands of other career paths that will get you into the arms of rich people much quicker than being a musician. It's just a few small, tiny fraction of the entire roster. So, yeah, discouraging people like that, even if this wasn't the intent, is kind of productive, because then you create the problem yourself by something like this. And I really don't think it was his intent at all. So, conclusion time. To sum up, this video is not good. It touches on way too many subjects, none of which it fully explores. It wants to discuss some important topics like the dissolving nature of AI in the musical sphere, the lack of proper compensation for artists, etc., etc., the over-reliance on technology when it comes to consumption, and, questionable practices because of it. These are all legitimate grievances to have, as I pointed out many times in this rant. But all of this gets just drowned out by complaints that things ain't what they used to be, and with the side dish of young kids these days, or them kids just don't understand, it just gets watered down to hell, and the original point is lost, because the most obvious thing that is apparent here is an old person yelling at clouds. And I know this is an unfair judgment of you, because I've seen your videos in the past, and I've liked a couple of them. They weren't all my cup of tea, but some of them I found genuinely impressive. And yeah, but all of this just gets completely sidetracked because the most apparent thing in your video isn't your legitimate grievances about things that go on in the pop music sphere, which again, I will highly recommend to just let it drown and let it die as it deserves. But all this like kids these days type of stuff. And that's not helpful. That's not helpful at all. Even if this was the intent in the beginning, maybe. But it's done the complete opposite. It made me do such a thing, even though I don't do videos like this and most likely won't ever do that. Never say never. But my channel is usually just for me making music sometimes. And me being creative and, contributing something like that to the overall, artistic expression of us. Not something like this. But this was, in my opinion, or at least it felt to me like it, necessary. And it's sad. It's a mess. And yeah, the crowning jewel of this unfocused video is that for me personally, the worst offense is talking about pop music getting worse as if pop is all of music, which isn't true and is really reductionist and harmful to the entire discussion as a whole. This is one of my biggest pet peeves that I have in conversations like these, is just let pop music go. Not just Rick, but many people that are doing the typical, oh yeah, pop music these days, and this is what makes this generation really bad and whatever. This generation, and this is just a hypothesis on my end now, is less defined by the pop music of its era than it has ever been. Of course, you got some big things like Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish and things like that. And yeah, they exist, and because of streaming, they seem to be as ubiquitous as ever. But as anyone, and I guess Rick especially, will tell you, the numbers being thrown out, and of course the money being made, I suspect is nowhere close to like when it was the golden age of the pop music industry in the 80s and 90s, where it just seemed like a license to print money for everything because consumers were apparently, very recipient to that. The labels had a lot of money to throw around, so yeah. But these times are over. And for me at least, it wasn't that pop music lost something all that much. It was just that for pop music back then, there was such good business to be made that there was room for artistic experimentation. There was room for real artistic intent to be expressed and to be put forth. That the business side of things was like, yeah, come on, like do whatever, do your experimental artistic thing. If it sells 5 million or 10 million, it makes us buttloads of money anyway. And so the room was being kept there for this to happen. And now that the margins have basically done to almost absolute zero, there is no room for artistic experimentation, etc., because that's what pop music ultimately was about. It's a business. It's profit. And I would say, also a hypothesis of mine, that big things like Queen and Led Zeppelin and Michael Jackson and whatever were such big phenomenons, not because of pop music, but I would say in spite of pop music, or the pop music industry, I should say. If they were left completely to their own devices and didn't have A&R people to worry about and, record sales and appeal, etc., maybe they would have pushed the artistic envelope even further than they already did. Some food for thought here. Because, you see, if pop music doesn't have a lot of money to throw around, that it immediately makes everything tighter and you have to survive as an artist somehow, which you can't, because artistry, it's not a commodity, at least not in the same way as, socks or ready-made meals that you put in the microwave. Something that is with a deep emotional value and not just something that you put a price tag on. And due to that price tag, it is worth something all of a sudden. When it's taken away, all of a sudden it's worthless, which I pleaded is not the case. Okay, so to finally put a period on it, the video wasn't great. Maybe it was well intended, but I didn't take it as such, and most people didn't as well, or at least a significant number of people didn't. And he should know better with such experience, with such expertise, and with such a huge audience and a big responsibility because of this. His video contributed nothing to the overall discussion. It didn't present any solutions. In fact, he basically states, yeah, let's us just give up already. And yeah, not good. Okay, I made my peace with it now, because this thing, I will have fun time cutting it. Will take maybe a week or two. Interest will probably die down because I'm already late, but I don't care. I need to put this out there so that it's out of my system, and that's it. And then I'll be finally done. What? There's a second video? Yeah, but this second video, I do not care about. I've seen it. It basically doubles down on things, and there he then clarifies that he was talking about pop music. Great, thank you. You could have done this from the very beginning. And also he did this Google Trends thing as an argument, which was hard to watch. Go watch Fantano's response to the video if you want to know more. I'm done. I got this out of my system. Let's see what I will cut together. I will make music on this channel again. Let's hope that such a thing doesn't take place again. It was fun, but it was also necessary. So,